I'm excited about this because my hope is that you all glean a little nugget about how to prepare your script before you submit it, and learn something, sort of like, getting a bunch of cookbooks. Like if you get one little nugget from each one, that's a great thing. And maybe you'll learn something tonight that will help you, not just in contest submission, but in just writing your screenplays. So just want to start with introducing everybody, and also saying you are here for the symposium on screenwriting contests. So without further ado, here's Mr. Matt Misetich, our sort of leader, fearless leader.
Whatever.
Whatever.
My screen froze right when you said that, so I'm not sure what you said.
Okay, good.
Something flattering, I hope.
Oh, he's the best.
Oh, good. Would you like me to introduce myself, or would you like me to go around
please.
introducing everyone? I'll introduce myself. Hello.
Everyone can introduce themselves.
Okay, good.
We're adults.
My name is Matt, and I have been here at Script Pipeline since 2006. In fact, it was February 2006, so it's been almost 18 years if I do the math right. And in that time, I have read many scripts, and that is why I'm here. I'll pass the baton over to Spike, who can introduce himself now.
That was a fantastic opening, Matt.
Hey, quicker the better on bios.
Yeah, there you go. Hi, everyone. My name is Spike. I like long walks on the beach, candlelight dinners, and dynamic storytelling in all forms. I'm here because I spent 10 years working out in the development side of Hollywood. I worked at a talent agency for 3.5 years, a major production company that did a superhero franchise for 1.5 years. And then I ended my career doing about 4.5 years at a television network, which then became a streamer, which you all would know at this point. So I joined Pipeline, I want to say 3 years ago now, when I decided to kind of give up the development sphere. And so I really enjoy working with young writers who are up and coming, finding those nice, voices with potential, and kind of shepherding them along their way to having great careers. And with that, I am going to pass it over to my good friend, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm a management and development exec here at Pipeline. Before Pipeline, I got my master's in screenwriting at Florida State University, got a job as a script reader at Shore Scripts, and then started working here. So my day-to-day, I help coordinate the workshop services. I do a lot of our just like back-end stuff. And then I'm also a script reader and do some contest judging here. So I guess I'll pass it to Ruth.
Yeah, hi everyone.
I started the whole pass the baton trend. Apparently. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're passing an invisible baton kind of around at this point. But my name is Ruth. Hopefully, if you've been a part of Symposium in the past, you've seen me pop in there. I'm the co-director with Jeannie of Symposium here at Pipeline, and I've really enjoyed that for the past year now, I think, as Symposium's been going. So I've been at Pipeline for about 8 years, and I love it. I'm a development exec there. I've been in the trenches reading scripts from the very beginning there, and Matt, elevated me into being able to run Symposium alongside Jeannie here, which I'm very happy about. So I write, I love writing. I write children's books and I write screenplays. And I am attempting my first middle grade novel this year, which is quite daunting, but I'm pretty excited about the venture there. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions about the screenwriting world. We've been reading scripts for a long time, judging scripts for a long time, and we've seen anything and everything in between. So happy to have questions tonight.
Great. And I'm Jeannie, co-director of Symposium with Ruth, and I also editor-in-chief of Pipeline Artists. And I am here to moderate tonight. So we have got no open questions. So we're going to talk, so shove your questions in there, but we're going to talk just in general about contests and some of the first things, like, okay, so let's start from the beginning. Like you open up a file for a script and you're like, what are the things that just instantly pop out of you that are almost like visual before you even start reading, that help you sort of center yourself, or might be a red flag?
I'll take that
Who
one.
wants to take that?
I'll take that one. This is a good question. The visual cues that could stand out in a script, because I think it's somewhat subjective from reader to reader. I think what I what I sort of prefer in terms of writing style might differ from Michelle and Ruth and Spike, but I think you'll start to see a through line amongst them. So there's some of the things that stand out to me. I like writing that kind of finds that Goldilocks zone between being sparse and being a little too descriptive. So I kind of lean into scripts that have a lot of fun sort of actiony type of voice in that opening scene, no matter what the opening scene might be too. Again, this is super subjective. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I like stuff that uses the underline and uses the bold here and there, maybe sparingly anyway, just to kind of like give a little dynamic quality to the voice. Obviously, if it's a script that's just kind of sloppy, or that just reads boring, that's not a good way to start a script. But I kind of like to see that energy in the writing, again, no matter what the genre might be.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off what you said, Matt, because I kind of had two answers to your question, Jeannie. The first thing I would say, kind of speaking to Matt's thing about you don't want to be too sparse, but not so descriptive either. A good screenplay should not, when you open it up, look like a book. It shouldn't have massive blocks of text without any like spaces of white between them. It's not the same medium, and you can't treat it as such. There are plenty of times where I will open up a screenplay and I will see like a 12-line paragraph all throughout the first couple pages. And it just screams, okay, this is someone who is used to writing books and used to writing novels and used to reading those, but they're not used to reading screenplays. And what I always tell those writers is pacing and flow are so much more critical in this medium than they are in others. You really have to kind of hit that pace and kind of keep the energy up, like what you were saying, Matt, in order to hold the reader's attention. Because when you just start getting bogged down in lines and lines and lines of text, it makes our energy levels just sink. And I'll like ask Ruth and Michelle if they agree with that statement in a second. But going another thing with what you were kind of saying, Matt, with like, you know, what you kind of look for in terms of how the writing is, I think a lot of writers need to have confidence. I feel like I read so many scripts and it feels like the writer is scared to take a chance. And I understand why, because so many writers are like, this is the dream, this is their everything, like they want to succeed at this. And so they play it really, really safe. They kind of get in there and they use very simplistic sentences and they use very easy descriptions that a lot of other people have used. But if they just had a little bit more confidence in their own voice, in the story they were telling, and the characters that they were crafting, it kind of allows you to more take over. And like what you're saying, Matt, go get more of that voice in there, which is where it really makes it special. So those are my two things.
Yeah, I think for me, whenever I open up a script, like I'm just trying to ground myself, like immediately, like what genre are we in? What are the characters? What are the world? And I think the less successful scripts I see is sometimes writers will start at a point in the story that doesn't really reflect the genre. Like I've seen scripts that end up being very comedic start with like a very kind of heavy, like dramatic scene, or I've seen like scripts that are like true like horror films kind of start with like a very like elongated kind of comedic moment. So I think that establishing the mood and the genre right away within the first couple of pages to me is like really important, because I think that just tells me right away that the writer like knows how to be concise. They've really thought it through, versus like when I see something that's the genre's not really clear, or like the story's not very clear, it just reads to me as like the writer hasn't put as much thought into the beginning of their story as maybe other scripts that I've read. So
Any visual
I
thoughts?
echo that for sure. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeannie.
Any visual thoughts?
I mean, visually for me, the very first thing that I look at on the page is just, you know, does this person know how to format a screenplay? I mean, that's honestly the first thing that pops into my head, is if I see blocks upon blocks of description, or if I see incorrect headers, or if I see incorrect spacing or wrong font size, you know, like anything that screams amateur to me, where you either do not have proper screenwriting software or don't know how to, you know, properly pace and structure a screenplay page, that's an immediate red flag for me. I will read, obviously, you know, we have to read it, but It's a knock against, unfortunately, it's a knock against the writer very early on if you are not following the proper rules and formatting structure of what's expected in the screenplay. That's the first thing I look at. So
I will make a note too on the look of a script. Scott Myers, who's great, by the way, you should follow him on Twitter. He used to do, he might still do it. He'll post like the first page of a recently produced script, right? And I think newer writers, or even writers who have been at it a while, will look at that and say, oh, well, Tarantino wrote it like this, so therefore I can emulate that style.
Right.
Or Amy
Right.
Schumer wrote this
Yep.
script and it got made, and this is what it looks like and sounds like, and
we'll make that
how it
mistake
looks like on
often.
page.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that's not the type of script you should be studying in terms of look and feel. Maybe for story, but not the actual writing itself, because those are established writers. They can do whatever they want, right? Especially Tarantino. No one's like reading his scripts and saying,
nobody's critiquing his writing style or his
Right.
his incredibly long blocks of description that he does that drives me insane.
Right.
Like I hate reading Tarantino scripts because I'm a reader, but it's
And that's
Ruth's got an axe to
all
grind against Tarantino.
Like,
yeah, I do.
but also Quentin is going to shoot his own stuff, so it doesn't matter how he reads.
Yeah, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
how he writes it.
Right.
It's all in his head. So
Right, and that, which is a good point too, because when we're judging scripts for a contest, I would hope other contests do the same thing, fellowships and so forth. I always tell our execs, and I keep reminding myself, to put yourself in the position of the industry person that's going to be potentially reading it next, right? We have to kind of share the same sort of approach. Like, what are some of the red flags? What are the green flags, for that matter? That's going to stand out in terms of visuals and otherwise. So,
which brings me to something someone asked about, including camera angles and movements in the screenplay. Like, Spike was saying, Tarantino directs his scripts, so he can do whatever he wants to do. Because he's bringing that script to life. But how do you guys feel when you're reading a script and they're putting, the camera angles, cut to, close up on, whatever? How does that make you feel when you're reading it?
I think it's, I'm sorry, Ruth, go ahead.
Well, I was about to say that I love this question because screenwriters are told all the time, not to over direct, don't direct the director, in a screenplay. And we're given all these parameters, all this red tape as screenwriters in our creativity. And to be quite frank with you, I play the devil's advocate in that in my own writing quite a bit, because I do believe that a screenwriter can absolutely direct the reader's mind's eye across the scene, however the hell they want to do it, to be honest with you. Now, obviously you don't do it so overtly, that you're saying the camera pans up, or, we zoom this direction. You don't use technical language, that would flag, I guess you could say, what a director's job necessarily. But by all means, you can absolutely use movement in terms of using, caps or underlining or italics, or however you want to paste the structure or the descriptions. You are a director on that page. You just have to do it incredibly delicately, if that makes sense. And we got Roni coming up here. Hey, Roni, how's it going?
Enter
Great.
Roni Brown. So Roni, if you wanted, before we continue, if you want to just give a quick little introduction of yourself, and because we're in progress, and then we'll keep going. But everybody, this is Roni Brown.
Hi, everybody. As Janine just said, I'm Roni Brown. I have been working with Script Pipeline for, I have no idea how many years now, but basically I've been a script reader. Yeah, at 5? Yeah, I think so. I've been reading for scripts for contests and services for about 10 years now. And my full-time job is writing. I'm currently on staff on a preschool series, so I'm exploring the preschool space. But I have written from preschool to adults, and with the focus on animation. That's where I'm at.
Great. So Roni, we're talking about whether it's like a pet peeve or whatever, how a reader of a contest might want to see a script, and if they wanted to see any kind of camera angles or anything like that in it, or if it pulls you out of the story. So that's what we just started discussing this.
Gotcha.
Spike, you had something to say, and then we'll let Ronnie get acclimated.
Yeah, no, I think Ruth said a lot of what I was going to say too, because I agree very much so that you are, I wouldn't say that you're the director of the script, but you are the storyteller. I mean, like, you are in a position where you are trying to weave a narrative for the reader. And so by all means, you should use whatever tools you have to do that. I have no problem if I read a script and it says, close up on this thing, because this thing is important and the reader needs to know what that is. I do have an issue with, like what Ruth was saying. If you say, all right, the camera is going to be, this place, and it's going to do this move, and it's going to go up here, because that is the director's job. And frankly, unless you're Quentin Tarantino shooting your own movie, you're not going to get say in that. And so stop doing that. I also hate when people over direct actors, where every single line of dialogue has parentheticals under it telling the actors how to deliver a line. Yeah. That's not your job. Like, your job is to craft characters that are believable enough to where the reader can intuit some of that, and then allow the actor to come in and kind of make those decisions. But by all means, you can say, we see this, we follow this person, we spin around, again, walk the reader through the world, like, take the reins and say, I am the storyteller. I am confident that I can weave this tale, and I'm going to do it this way, and it's going to work out.
I think Spike has telepathy or something, because someone also asked that we see, we meet question.
Oh, there you go.
So we could address that if anybody's got something else to say about camera angles or the we see and we meet.
It's something that you have to use sparingly. And the reason being is, we read hundreds, if not, thousands of scripts a year. Well, collectively, obviously, we read thousands of scripts a year, but individually, hundreds and hundreds of scripts a year. Industry people are reading tons of scripts a year. It just slows out. It slows down the read. It takes you out of the story. But you can, look at, you hear this all the time. You really can do whatever you want as long as it works. And I know that's vague, but it's kind of everything in moderation. It's like eating and drinking, right?
Well, it's a very intentional move. Like you just said, it slows things down. And if you are intentionally trying to slow a moment down, then use that technique, that's what it's for.
Michelle, did you have any thoughts on that, or Ronnie?
I kind of echo what everyone's saying. I mean, there's times if I'm glancing like the first page of a script, and then I can see extreme zoom out, extreme close up, this. If I see so many, because some people will do like all their camera angles in bold, and so you can see it like in the script, it starts feeling more like a technical document than like a story. So I think I do will direct the eye in certain shots in my own writing, but I think use it in moderation. And I think just you want your reader to be engrossed in the story. So I think when you get too technical with it, it starts feeling like it's a shooting script instead of like a spec script. So I don't really have any kind of differing opinions on that one.
Yeah, same. It's just, use it at your discretion. I have seen scripts where they definitely overuse it, and I was just like, I don't understand what's going on in the story at this point, because I'm trying to picture these different camera angles and stuff. I will say, when it comes to animation scripts, we sometimes do use camera angles and stuff like that, but even then, it's not a lot. It's not feeling like it's a director's script and basically laying out every single shot. So I personally have only used them in a few scripts that I've written over the years. Like, I've rarely put in shots in my scripts.
I want to ask this question that's not really a contest question, but it's still, I think, something that might be on the minds of TV writers out there who are listening. This person wants to write for TV and wanted to know if it was best for them to focus on writing an original pilot or doing a spec script of a current show. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Both.
I would defer to Ronnie, but I think I know her answers.
I personally would say, have both, because if you are submitting to some of these fellowships and stuff as well, they'll ask for both. So if you're still submitting on that end, you will definitely need both. But when it comes to submitting for shows, I've used my my television spec a few times actually, and I've used my original. So it helped to have both on hand for
Mhm.
both worlds, for the, the staffing world and for the contest world. And just, I'm at the point where I need to update my spec script. That's another thing I'll say, like don't be like me. I have a Blackish script from like 7 years ago. Definitely write something current as well.
And this is the problem with specs, right? Because they go out of fashion so fast.
Yeah.
If you write something and then 3 years later the show's canceled, bam, you can't use that spec anymore. Those months and months you spent on that story are now gone.
Yes.
I'll speak from the person who used to read at a production company and a TV network. We never read specs, not once. I agree with Roni that they are useful because the fellowships require them. But I would say focus most of your energy on the original stuff, because in my experience, whenever we have showrunners staffing up for TV staffing, they all wanted the original voice. And they said, all right, I would rather have someone with a stronger original sample than I would at them copying someone else's style and leaning into that. I'd rather have the better writer. So I can only speak to that fact where, just like Roni said, specs go out of style very, very quickly and you can't use them all the time. And then you're just rewriting more things that you're going to use for a limited period. But a good original spec you can use for 10 years if it's really that good.
Yeah.
I will add too that I've never heard of a manager really not only not requesting a spec, but when we say spec, I think we already defined it, but a spec of like an existing show rather as opposed to a spec screenplay. They just won't. They won't read it because there's no point in wasting their time on it, because it's not something that they can take out, and it really doesn't reflect that writer's ability to handle an original story with original characters and an original plot and all that. However, to Ronnie's point though, I don't think it's bad for the points that she mentioned, but also just as an exercise as a training exercise almost before you might dive into your first original pilot, just to get a sense of like pacing and plot and structure and stuff of an existing show that you might have already watched. So yeah, that's the benefit.
Someone asked, and I'm not quite sure what they mean, but they say, are notes like a key or legend that precede a feature screenplay helpful or unnecessary? I don't know what they're talking about, whether like a little kind of
I know what they're
acclimate
talking
you.
about. Yeah, that's actually a common tool in stage plays for the people to put, like the writer to put like a note of different, like either like definitions of words and or like a key. Usually it's related to like period pieces or completely fictional or fantasy worlds where you actually have to like denote like a magical system or something to that effect. So I've seen that often. And I'm just going to tell you not to do it, like in general. So in general, that should not be present in a screenplay. It can be present, and it's much more common in the fantasy realms, like novels and things of that nature. But in screenplays, really, you should not have to put like a dictionary or definitions or things of that nature, unless it's surrounding a specific historical event and you want some kind of prelude. Like, for example, like you're leading into the scene, sometimes you'll see like a little, it's this period of time or something to that effect. It's a super, like it's a text insert that you put in there, but by no means is it a key, because otherwise you're going to have your reader having to flip back to that particular key. It's going to break up their flow. They're going to get annoyed by the end of your screenplay, and it's going to be a pass most likely if you're having to rely on a key for any of those situations. So just try to avoid that.
Yeah, Ruth is 100% correct, but I have to throw in the caveat that sometimes it does work, because very famously, Travis Beacham did this exact same thing for the spec of Pacific Rim. And that movie went on to make, I think, over $800 million at the box office, something like that. He had that same thing. Like after the title page, he went like, this is a dictionary of terms that my characters are going to say. Flip back here whenever you don't understand it. And then you go through and you get it. Now, that's the exception to the rule. I mean, there's only one Pacific Rim. It does not happen very often. So everything Ruth just said, everyone should listen to. But as so often is in the writing field, sometimes you break all the rules and it still works. There's always an exception to it. So I would also say don't do it, but I can't say that I've never seen it work to, huge box office success either.
I wanted to ask that question because about the breaking the rules and how often you guys all see somebody in the years that you've been doing this, how often you see like that big block of text or that all these things that you're saying don't do, and then you're reading it going, oh, damn, this is great. Like, how often does that happen, that the writer breaks these rules and the script really stands out?
I can lead off on that one. It depends what the rule is. The big block of text and the big, sort of like Tarantino-esque type of script, or, established writer just jotting their thoughts down on paper type of script, that doesn't really work. But one of our first look project winners this past season, Brendan Udy, is it Uday? I should have known how to pronounce it before I came here. He wrote a completely just batshit crazy script that will it's almost unproducible, which was his point. It was kind of a stunt script to that effect, and he continuously in his voice or in his writing style broke the fourth wall, kind of addressed the reader, or just sort of like went on little tangents here and there. He did it in such a way though where it wasn't distracting and it actually enhanced the read, and the writing style actually matched the tone and the feel of the script, which is a big action comedy, magical realism, fantasy, family drama thing, right? I would imagine, I haven't read the script for Everything Everywhere All at Once, but it's a little different because they were already established directors too. But I would imagine that it had the writing style matched that frenetic pace, and to do that, you do have to stretch some of the traditional, boring screenwriting parochial structure. So the answer is it depends on what the rule is. I wouldn't go and start writing giant blocks of text or no scene headings. I read a script once that had no scene headings, and actually it worked for that script. I take it back. So maybe you can, but for the most part, I wouldn't recommend it. I would just lean harder into differentiating the script based on your writing style and your voice,
rather than breaking the rules or choosing.
In a way, you could define that as breaking the rules, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think you kind of have to look at it through sort of like a superficial lens too. Like if I see someone breaking some major script convention, and then also like every third word is misspelled and it's in a Word document, I'm just gonna assume that they don't know what they're doing. But if it's like everything looks very professional, the writing's super elegant and sophisticated, if that script is breaking a rule, I'm gonna assume it's intentional. So you kind of have to, I think if you're gonna be really bold, I think you need to make sure your script is very like grammatically like on point, and it looks very professional, so whoever's reading it knows it's like an intentional choice, and it's not like you just didn't know what you were doing.
And it enhances the read.
Yeah.
To mention, yeah.
And you've established that you actually know what you're doing with a script,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, look, sorry, go ahead, Jeannie.
Oh, no, keep going if you're going to keep asking. There's just a little side question about this, about
I was
putting
just
stuff at
gonna
the
say,
beginning of the script.
when it works, it works. That's the thing. It's like sometimes you go for something and it just doesn't work. It falls flat on its face. But the times where it does work are the ones where we remember it. My favorite script ever has no human characters. It's a script about wolves, and the script sold for $500,000. It'll never get made. Like Matt said, it's unproducible. But if anyone had told me, hey, I'm going to have a script with literally the main characters being animals and they don't talk, it's not animated, I would have said that doesn't work. Like that's going to fail, and it didn't. So sometimes, going back to my point about confidence, you just need to say, I'm going to do this because I'm going to try it. And if it doesn't work, then you just need to have the confidence to say, oh, well, and shrug it off and go write the next script.
Spike also wrote an article about that script on Pipeline Artists, in case you're curious.
I dropped the link in the chat if you guys want to.
Oh, good. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. So back to the question of putting stuff at the beginning of the script, somebody asked if they put like a quote of a famous person like Carl Sagan against a black screen, like something like that. Would that be fine?
That's fairly common.
That's
Yeah.
Okay.
I like
so now got to ask this really this great question, because this is what they're all here to know. Could you guys touch upon the type of scripts that might be successful and place well in script pipeline's first look versus the feature contest?
Versus the script pipeline feature contest?
Yeah.
Oh, and
So
the
how you guys look at things differently between a first look and the feature contest?
I think everyone should weigh in on that too, but I
Yeah.
think the answer could be given just generally what we're looking for in terms of like what makes a pipeline script. And I think we're all kind of on the same page with that, but I'm curious to hear everyone's answers. And let's start with Roni. Why not?
This is a test.
This is a test.
I feel like this question
Your
is
career and your
Matt.
position here will depend on
Wait,
it.
why is Matt handing the script off? This is a question tailor made for our fearless leader over here.
I
No.
know, that's how I thought.
Oh, I can answer all
Back
day.
to you,
but-
Matt.
That's a match.
I can start. Would you like me to start with the answer? I
Yeah.
wanted to give someone else
Yeah,
a
they don't
chance,
want.
but fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, for first look, just to hit upon that first, that's we do weigh the concept originality more than the main screenwriting and TV writing competitions. So if a script is a little bit rough, but just has this tremendously good, marketable, fresh original concept, that would leapfrog a script that might be better written or better structured overall, but is just kind of a sort of mediocre concept. Whereas the screenwriting and TV writing competitions, it's pretty much all like writing ability. Like, is this a good writer? Is this a good storyteller? Although we do take marketability into consideration once we get down toward the to the final stages there. So that's the difference between the two. But as far as what I don't know if this person asked this specifically, but we were going to touch upon this anyway, so let's touch upon it now. As far as what makes a script stand out for us, for a very long time, I thought that we were pretty neutral. We were just looking for good writing. There's no real like type of pipeline winner. And now, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, I'm realizing we do kind of have a type when it comes down to picking the winner out of the top few finalists. For me, it's the stuff that's a little bolder, that's a little bit more audacious in its approach or in its writing or in its concept, or all those things. To give you an example, our 2021 winner, which was #1 on the blacklist last year, Cauliflower, it's actually, I don't know if I should pitch it. I don't know if I can pitch it. It's a crazy script though, trust me. It's a sport, what's that, Spike?
The log line is out there. If they look up the blacklist, they can see the log line.
Oh, that's true. I don't want to get into too much plot detail with spoilers, but anyway, it's a elevated sports drama with a supernatural twist on it, where a high school wrestler, his cauliflower ear, which is what you get when you're a wrestler, starts to talk to him, which is like, on paper, it's like, who in the world would ever want to read the script? And everyone who read it loved it. And it's just one of those things that it just felt very different. But more importantly, or if not most importantly, it had an emotional through line that was not only very good, but it felt very different. It was commenting on a topic that I hadn't really seen touched upon that much. It's the pressures of high school athletes in this case. But it was the way it was told, just brought such a cool perspective to it. So there's that one. The year or 2 years prior to that, our 2019 winner, which I mentioned because today on Deadline, they just announced finally that it went into production this week with Olivia Cooke to star, and I'm very excited. Olivia Cooke was in House of the Dragon, if you watch that sort of thing. But that script too, it's this one I'm also not sure I'm very careful about what I'm pitching nowadays, because especially stuff that's like has things attached or is in production. So I'll give you the broad strokes. It's a period piece. It takes place in Ireland. It touches upon themes of religion and Catholicism, and it gets a little dark here and there. And it doesn't seem like a traditionally, a script that would traditionally get like a ton of interest. But again, it was just such an emotionally gripping script, and it touched upon so many universal themes that it almost didn't matter like the setting or the subject matter necessarily. You could connect with it because of that undercurrent that runs underneath the basic plot and the characters and so forth. Anyway, I can give you 1,000 different examples and ramble on, but for me, it has to be, it doesn't have to be, but it should be big and bold, but also really be personal to the writer. I've never read a great script where the writer's like, oh, I just came up with it and I don't really care about this topic, or I don't care about this message that I'm conveying. That never happens. It has to be something that you were super passionate about writing, because that's going to come through on the page. And now I will let all of you tell your own reasons for why scripts seem to stand out.
I have two. I'm a very simple reader, and so I have two check boxes for my pipeline, approved screenplays. Is number one, does it entertain me?
For sure.
And number two, is it unusual? And those are, if I can say yes to both of those questions, usually I'm fighting for that script in the finals for winner on that front. So I'm very simplistic upon that front. So entertain me, because that's the job of a screenwriter. And is it something unusual that I haven't really seen before? So, and I don't use unique, I use unusual. Very
how do you define unusual? It doesn't have to be like completely off the wall. It just has to be a little bit different. Or
I think unusual for me is showing a writer that colors outside of the lines, in terms of either societal norms or expectation or creative choices, whatever they're doing. They're clearly pushing some kind of boundary. They're pushing some kind of boundary, either in my personal psyche or in just a general, like accepted psyche of whatever's out there. If I feel pushed upon, I guess you could say, as a reader, I was like, I don't know if I agree with that, or that's a little weird, or it makes me think of something that I've never thought of before. It's unusual. And so that's usually my criteria. So
this question was also this, I think we should expand upon all of this, but I also just wanted to point out the question was also kind of honing down into what makes something successful in Script Pipeline's first look versus the
feature, right?
So I just want to make sure we address that, but I think all this other stuff is stuff that people are wondering as well, like what makes the script stand out to you?
Well, Matt, stop me if I'm wrong, but if I understand it correctly, it's first look is concept first, execution second, and feature screenplay competition is execution first, concept second, or
essentially, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really more about the general idea in the first look contest, and it might be a rougher script rather than having it be perfect and polished and ready to go out to executives tomorrow.
Right, it shouldn't be too rough, just to be clear. First one, like you have to know how to write a script. It has to be
like
good,
it shouldn't be on a napkin. Or
no napkins.
That's a little more than rough, but I'll just repeat what Matt and Ruth took exactly what I was going to say, where I've always gone with bold, and Ruth said entertaining, because if a script is not entertaining, then we can't send it to our industry colleagues. As someone who was an industry reader for 10 years, if I'm bored by a script by page 30, guess what? I got 30 other things in my stack. I'm probably not finishing that script. I'm putting it down. So it's got to be entertaining all the way through, because that is the job. And Ruth also said the other thing I was going to say, which was pushing boundaries, like show me something different. We can all read the same cop show 100 times, but if you can give us something about high school wrestlers who has a cauliflower ear that talks to him, I've never read a script like that before, and I've been in the industry for 12 years. I've read thousands and thousands of scripts. So finding that new way into something interesting is key for me.
Yep.
And
I think.
And what do you guys look for when you're, because everybody talks about contests being so, subjective, and you never know about the writer, but I think it's important to get a glimpse of what everybody what pops for them. So Michelle, what pops for you?
I think for me, it's like I've said this before, but like the emotional resonance of the script. Like I like scripts that are very like atmospheric. Like when you're reading it, the writer's not just like, oh, they sit down on the couch, but it's like, this is like a bad sentence, but they add a little bit more flavor to it, like, oh, they lounge against the couch or something. But I feel like a lot of the best scripts that I've ever read, they just really create a whole atmosphere with the writing without bogging the actual story down. So I think just creating a nice tone, mood in terms of the execution, and then the story itself. I mean, for me, I like stuff that kind of follows those basic screenwriting conventions that everyone talks about, like 3-act structure, following those beats, because it's hard to do. Like a lot of scripts that I read and give notes on, a lot of times those kind of basic elements aren't there. They're really difficult to master. So for me, it's execution of the story, and then the writing should feel pretty atmospheric. And I think the overall product of those two things, I think, should create some kind of emotional response in the reader, whether that's just like laughing if it's a comedy. It doesn't have to be like a deep script necessarily, but it should elicit like something from the reader, in my opinion.
Discuss.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, I'm really big on basically understanding where your story is going and tying up all loose ends, not forgetting about characters and having them drop off, halfway through the script. Really delivering a story that feels complete. Like when I look back at it, I'm like, I don't really have many questions, or like, I get it. And it's because everything that needed to be on the page is there, and it's there without becoming too complicated. Sometimes I find, especially when people write like sci-fi and thriller, they tend to go to overcomplicate the writing and the story and the plot and stuff like that, and you just kind of get lost. So if you're reading it, or if you have somebody around you reading it, you're doing a table read or something, and people are getting lost, then definitely be careful when you're submitting it to contest, because it's not going to mesh well, especially with somebody like me who's like, well, wait a minute, that there's no through line there. This character was like this at the beginning of the script. Their personality completely changed for absolutely no reason. Just really understanding what you're writing, it comes through on the page.
So a lot of people talk about writing a script that's low budget, getting a better chance of getting it made or whatever. But from a contest perspective, does a contest reader, when a script is submitted, is that something you ever consider or think about or care about?
No.
Like the budget?
Budget. Like, because you hear a lot of advice on Twitter, write low budget scripts, better chance of getting made. But from a perspective of entering a contest and getting the attention of the readers, is that something that ever, because I know when the finalists come in, Matt goes out trying hard to get them repped. Do you think that matters at all?
I'm
sorry. I don't know if anybody else will agree with this, but especially when I do enter contests, and I've done it, in the past, I wasn't just thinking about, oh, I want to get this script made. I was thinking about, I want these people to understand my voice, because even if this particular script never gets made, they might want me for something else. They might consider me for something else. There's other jobs and there's other things that could be written. So I've never been too married to the stuff that I'm submitting to where I'm like, oh, my goal is just to get this made. That script might not ever get made. Yeah, I'm okay with that, but it also got me jobs.
Yeah, the likelihood of you entering, the same screenplay into a competition, it winning that competition, and that actually going into production, I mean, it's kind of very low chances, just for those out there. But y'all can fight me on this, but I think budget is out the window on competitions. I think number one, you're there to entertain, and you're there to show your voice and your style and your chops. Like you can throw the Matrix into the ring, and you should. If you have that concept and that in your back pocket, you absolutely should do that.
A manager will sign you if you wrote a really, really spectacular script that is probably like $100 million plus. Yeah. It might not get made, but you're going to at least get a meeting out of it, I would think, right? Don't hold back, but also I also wouldn't recommend writing a big fantasy type epic, but that's less in terms of budget and more in terms of if the scope is, well, it is in terms of budget. I mean, if the scope is that vast, you might you're just going to limit your options, I think, because most producers aren't going to look at it because there's nothing that they can do with it.
I don't know, Matt. I think it's just because you hate fantasy.
I love fantasy. I don't know. You always say I hate fantasy.
You hate fantasy. You do.
I like Lord of the Rings and I like Game of Thrones. I count.
Yeah. Well, you're one of the present day fans. You're not like one of the true originals, of the.
No, I'm not a true original at all. I'll admit that. By the way, just a side note, I think Jeannie already touched upon it. Someone had asked if we're going to discuss competitions in general and the strategy for entering and what they're looking for. We are, but we're going to have to do it like we have been doing through the prism of Script Pipeline, because I don't know what the other contests are really necessarily looking for. I can give you some general ideas of what tends to land, but again, that's going to be through our own POV.
Yeah.
Right. And that question about first look and Script Pipeline feature was a question asked by an attendee. So that's why we were addressing it. So there are a couple different questions in here. People asking, how do they find a screenwriting contest and how do they know if it's reputable and one they should enter? I would like to just chime in on that because I don't read for Script Pipeline. So, and I've entered a ton of contests in my life, but one of the things that I used to do was look up to see the finalists for all the different contests and go check them out on Twitter, go check their IMDb, check to see if that contest has advanced them at all. Like, did they get repped? Did they, what are they doing now? Like, and sometimes I would reach directly out to them and ask them, what did the contest do for you? Like, what, are you satisfied with, did they give you what they promised you? People are you can reach out to them so easily on Twitter. And I think hearing from the people who were the finalists in the contests is really the best way to do it. Because or else you could Google contests and you can get all kinds of spin, but there are ways that I always found that speaking to a writer, like, did they stay in touch with you? Did you feel like or was it just like you had to find out that you were the finalist because you just saw it online one day and no one even told you? There's things like that for me as a writer, that personal thing matters to me. So I would always reach out to finalists. But do you guys have any other thoughts on how to pick a contest? Because I know you guys are all writers as well, and Roni's done fellowships and stuff like that.
I just have a quick tip because I don't think a lot of people know this, but in terms of just saving money, like our contest, and I'm pretty sure others do this as well, like the earlier you register, the cheaper the fee is. And like for our contest, you can update it along the way. Not every contest does that, but I would just be really mindful of like budget and like, if you register early, you don't have to put as much money into it. So I just think that's a tip that not everyone really realizes. So I just want to put that out there.
I think we're the only competition that lets you update without a fee, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it.
A lot of competitions will let you update if you place. Then they will let you update your script.
That's always a weird thing. I'm sorry, I don't want to take a soapbox, but that's a weird thing to me that you can just replace the draft that you entered with. Because what if you have, let's say, 30 finalists and they can submit a new draft to the script, but what if like 10 of them are like out of town and they don't have they can't send like the latest draft or something?
Lose, you lose, man.
No, I don't agree with that.
So
fortunately, we don't have that rule, so it's okay.
No, we don't.
But,
yeah.
Sorry.
So to go back to the question of like, how do you find a really valuable contest? One thing that I've read, I want to say, for like 4 or 5, maybe 6 competitions in my life. And without trying to sound like I'm just plugging Pipeline, Pipeline is my favorite. There's a reason I've been here for 3 years, not just a single season. But one thing that I always got really annoyed by, even when I was a producer or an executive, was people would query me all the time and they'd say, oh, I was a quarterfinalist here, I was a semifinalist here. And then I would go and I would look on those competitions and I would see that their list of quarterfinalists, and there were so many names on there that it was like impossible to even find them to like verify, oh, this person was a quarterfinalist this year, because the competition would have 2,000 names as their quarterfinalist. When I see that as a producer, someone who actually like wants to know, all right, do I take 2 hours on my weekend, because that's probably when I'm reading this, to like invest in this thing, and I see that the contest casts the widest net possible in terms of like who they're going to make for placers, I take it less seriously as someone who actually reads in the industry, because it's clear to me that they're putting out as many names as possible so they can say they can get free advertising, right? Because everyone goes on Twitter, it's like, oh, I'm a quarterfinalist here, this is great, I love it, all right. They're like cheering the horn, and all they're doing is they're giving advertising for that contest. One of the things that I love about Pipeline is that our quarterfinalists and our semis and our finalists, we keep that stuff tight. I mean, it's 75 quarters, Matt. I think it's like 25
It's,
semis.
well, it's less now for the main competitions. I
Right.
kind of trimmed it down again.
But
yeah.
but there's a reason why whenever we send stuff to industry people, they pay attention to it, because they know that
Yeah.
it's not just a grab bag of whoever like we could get in there. Like, we actually say, these are people who actually really, truly impressed us with their storytelling. So one thing that you can do if you want to find a really good contest is look to see, does it look like they're actually trying to elevate the real cream of the crop, or are they just trying to include as many people as possible so they can get more entries next year?
Yeah.
And the
And
Twitter
that-
free promo is a thing.
It is a thing.
Right. Yeah.
It's a thing.
I was going to say, basically echo Michelle when it comes to budget and watching your dollars. Not only looking for contests that will help you out in terms of like re-uploading scripts if you need to or whatnot, but also understand where you are, because I feel like there are some smaller contests or maybe local contests and stuff like that that you could submit to for a low fee that kind of gives you an idea if the script is even worth committing to a major contest. Vetting your own work can happen through contests as well. So just understanding your script, because you don't, to me, I feel like you don't want to waste a lot of time and money on a lot of contests throughout the years, and you don't understand where the script actually is. So, getting to contests that provide feedback, getting notes from contests, using those extra services can be beneficial when you are approaching the contest world, because it's a whole world in and of itself. Notes and feedback, taking that feedback, utilizing it and resubmitting. Don't just ignore the feedback like, oh, well, they just didn't get it, that type of deal.
And the feedback you usually get in contests is a lot more reasonably priced than if you just get script notes.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not going to name names or anything, but obviously, kind of do your research too on which organizations, which platforms give good feedback from people who are qualified to give that feedback. Because otherwise you might get good notes with someone who might be a volunteer, might not have a lot of reading experience, but it's kind of a toss-up. So in fact, your odds are worse than a toss-up. So I would only go with those companies that that trying to tiptoe. There's too much tiptoeing I'm trying to do around everything.
Well, the Twitter streets will talk.
Yeah,
The Twitter streets will talk.
Yeah, they will.
Anyway, do your research. That's my
And the
takeaway.
other thing to look at too is the prizes that the contests offer. Like what
For sure.
do you need in your life and in your career? Are you looking for introductions, or are you just looking for cold hard cash? Like what is it that you're looking for? Like always consider that. And Carlton had asked like me specifically what contests I recommend. And for me, it's been varied. I haven't entered contests in a really long time. And so I hesitate because of the contests that I used to go to all the time, I wouldn't enter today. Let's just say that. But I will also say, and like Spike was saying, I don't want this to come off as like, I'm just promoting Script Pipeline because this is where we all work. I will say as the newest person at Pipeline who's on this panel, when I first came on 2 years ago, it was contest season and, everything was kind of winding down. And I remember Matt said, let's have it's time to pick the, for winner, runner up, whatever, Zoom meeting for the staff, come with your arguments to argue for the scripts you love. And it was the most fascinating thing to witness. I hadn't, I'd only read a couple of the scripts. I just came on board, and I don't judge. So, but just to sit there and watch the debate that they have, minds that were changed or not changed, and in watching the debate, you understand what people look for in a screenplay, and it's all the things that they talked about earlier. And voice, is big, structure is big, idea, does it grab you, is it personal, all of that is big. And in reading those top handfuls of scripts, you're just like, wow, these are great,
Yeah.
and so I mean, I would just, contests change, and the people who run them change. So like Roni said, Twitter is a great place to find out currently what's going on. Not to toot all your horns. You can forget that I said all those nice things
Toot.
about you.
Toot away. More tooting.
More tooting. So let's see. I want to make sure we cover like really context specific questions. But we can also expand upon things that people are asking, like some industry.
Well, actually, while you're looking through the questions, that's just one more note on that general topic. For us, I can't speak to other contests, but for us, we've always been kind of leaning hard on our own company success based on how many writers we get repped, or how many writers get their scripts optioned or produced as a direct result of our facilitation. That's still the goal, but in recent months, the past year or two, I'm kind of gearing everything more toward like really developing these writers and creating that long-term relationship, which we've always had anyway. But reading more material that they have, giving them notes on that material from our execs, so Roni and Michelle and Spike and so forth, reading their scripts and even weighing in on new concepts that they might consider writing next. That's been like the biggest benefit, I think, to our current and former finalists and winners. So any contests out there that do have a reputation of working more one-on-one with their writers, I would think that's a good benefit as well. So it's not just, hey, you won, and then you never talk to that person again, right? Outside of, even more so than like notoriety. I mean, everyone knows what the top 3 or 4 or 5 contests are at this point, contests and fellowships. So hopefully everyone's kind of evolving in that direction as well, going into a more development heavy sort of role.
And here's some question that I'd never heard before. Somebody said that a friend of theirs recommended that they only enter competitions that IMDb acknowledges and allows you to list on your page. And would you agree with that? And how do you find out which ones IMDb recognizes?
Do you guys know what that means? I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
No,
What does that mean?
Well, it's an anonymous attendee, so I don't know who asked the question. It was an early question.
Yeah, that's not an official thing. I've heard people ask, some people have asked me that before, and that's just because somebody, some clever somebodies have purchased an IMDb profile, and they have listed, because they have purchased an IMDb profile, have listed out placements in competitions underneath their profile, but it's not like there's not an IMDb recognition of specific screenplay competitions. So, but it is a clever way of trying to get your accolades out there on a very big platform called IMDb. So,
yeah.
The other day I literally was just looking up, like I just Googled, 2023 screenplay contest deadlines for this year, and there was several sites that have very comprehensive list. So, and there's other people that have already done the research for you. So it's the info is definitely out there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a screenplay competition though does not count as an IMDb credit, if that's what they're asking. So.
Oh.
When I was when I was at the networks and I wanted to see if someone had actually placed in a contest, I wouldn't go to IMDb for that information. I would go to
a contest site directly,
website, and I would look that up. Or more than likely, I would just get a query that had, "Hey, I've placed A, B, C, D," and then if I read the script and I liked it, I would actually go and like confirm it there. But I would not go on IMDb to confirm that. I would only go there for like active filmmakers to look up like their filmography.
Right.
So somebody asked, is there hope for those who place but are not finalists?
We need a
Like
positive
what
answer.
advice would you give people who made the quarterfinals or semifinalists and, you know, in our contest, any contest, like what advice would you give for them of how to best, because obviously the contest isn't going to promote them, but how to best maybe utilize that for their own career and getting exposure?
I'll just jump in and just say, for us anyway, the reason we have this small field of quarterfinalists is so that we can go back and request the latest draft from them after the contest is ended and actually give them feedback on that script so that they can send it back to us and we can take another informal look to see if we have industry that can line up. So again, I don't know of any other contests that really do that. So that aside, placing at least as a quarterfinalist or a semi or finalist or higher, I think at minimum it gives you kind of a general understanding of like, hey, at least I'm on the cusp, where I'm doing something right, where I placed here, here, and here, and it's not these, you know, random placings. They must have seen something good in the script. You know, how to utilize that beyond your own motivation. I would include it in queries, but like Spike said, if you're a one quarter finalist of 1,500 or 2,000 quarter finalists, the industry person, they probably know the deal there, and that's not really going to impress them all that much. I would even go as far as to say, is in some cases you might even not even want to mention that at all, which seems like, well, then what was the point of me even placing as a quarterfinalist? But I don't know. To me, it can sometimes work against you, I think, if it is that big of a field, because it is kind of an empty sort of thing. Just my opinion. But otherwise, I'm curious what some of the others who entered contests and fellowships in place before, like Roni.
I was going to say it depends on the prestige, honestly. Like, you know, I wouldn't necessarily lead if I'm meeting with somebody with, hey, you know, I was a quarterfinalist in Columbus, Ohio's newest screenplay contest.
Right.
But, you know, for
all
Sundance,
due respect to
absolutely.
Columbus. Yeah.
For Sundance, yeah. For Cannes, yes.
Or nickel or something. If you're a quarterfinalist
Yeah.
in nickel, that you know has some weight.
Yeah. I the short answer is there hope? Yes, that there is hope. That's the very short answer of it, because I mean, I'll be very frank with this, is there is a limited number of finalist spots in every single competition out there. Usually there's like 10 or less. And unfortunately, even at Pipeline, those who place as semifinalists, you know, we have to choose finalists out of a very impressive lineup of semifinalists, right? And so we actually have to say no or pass over, you know, a very, very good quarterfinalist script, a very, very good semifinalist script in order to get to our finalist scripts, right? And so in a lot of cases, the scripts that we're passing over to try to like really squeeze it down to those final 10, those are producible, marketable scripts that you can take out on your own, even outside the competition arenas, and just network the hell out of it and potentially get a deal or option agreement or manager or whatever you can. Competitions are not the only way forward. They are a way forward for screenwriters, but by no means should it be your only basket, you know, that you're tossing your eggs into. And so, yes, there is hope for screenplays that do not place, or that place only as quarters or whatnot. So on the positive note there. So
I'm gonna say kind of the same thing in a different way. The short answer is it depends, because like I said before, if you're consistently getting quarterfinalists in a competition that has 2,000 quarterfinalists, that accolade is going to get watered down because it doesn't mean as much, because the contest doesn't make it mean as much. If everyone gets a trophy, the trophy is not special, unfortunately, and that's how some contests operate. But if I'm a producer and I get a query from someone who's like, hey, I'm a 5-time semifinalist at Nichols. I've never made finalists, but I continue to get this close in a prestigious contest. That's someone that I'm going to go and say, all right, maybe this person has talent. Clearly they have talent because they keep getting far in a really good contest. Maybe they just need a little bit of producing help to kind of get them over the edge. So I would definitely say I see a lot of people who get really hung up on the fact of like, I want to win. Like winning is the only option for me to feel like this was a success. And I don't think that that's a good way to go about it, because only one person wins. Eminem got second in the rap Olympics. Who got first the year that Eminem got second? No one knows, because that guy went on to have a career. Eminem was the star of that show. So if you continue to show that you've got talent, if you can kind of pile up good, meaningful accolades, and just because you don't make finalists does not mean that there's like a nail in your coffin. So
Right.
I would say unequivocally, yes, there's absolutely hope.
Because it does get subjective. I mean, everything is subjective, right? But it does get even more subjective when you get down to like picking a winner and picking a runner up. And even amongst us, we're not in agreement unanimously every season. We were in 2021 Cauliflower, I guess, and we were in 2019 with Visitation. And look what happened to those two. One's got some traction in development. It was #1 on the blacklist, and the other one is shooting as we speak in Ireland. So, but nevertheless, there's so many scripts too that didn't make the finals or didn't make the semis, didn't even make the quarters. That it doesn't mean that that script is unproducible. It's just one person's opinion, which is why I think as much as I would love people to submit to us and let us read their scripts, you do kind of have to cast a bit of a net when it comes to submitting and getting other people's opinions, both for notes and for contests and fellowships.
One thing
I
I wanted to
think-
say too, when people were talking about choosing contests, another out of the box way to get some insight is a lot of times the contest will have a kind of vibe to it, kind of thing that they look for, like a certain contest kind of has a thing that they look for. And they don't always post the log lines, but so it's hard to kind of understand that. But that's where reaching out to some of the finalists, like a handful of finalists from each contest, and kind of get an idea of, oh, okay, this is kind of what these scripts have in common. Maybe it's something that's more social awareness or whatever, that sometimes you can find that like a kind of thing a certain contest looks for. It's a little harder, a little more work to do digging in. And somebody had asked, and I'm not sure if anybody missed expanding upon this, but they wanted to know 2 or 3 things that our finalists or you found in the world for the different contests you might read for as well. 2 or 3 things that the finalists and winning scripts have in common, those ones that are right up at the top, not just that advance to second, third, finalist round, like that get right up there.
I would love to answer this question because for me, it's really simple. Number one, I saw you posted my structure versus voice debate with
Yes.
Karen. So for me, having great structure is key, because if you can structure a great story, that's going to help the entertainment factor of making sure that you're consistently keeping the reader engaged all the way through the story, not just the first 30 pages, but all the way through it. Don't let me like burn out page 50 or 60 because I'm bored because nothing's happened. So having great structure is key. But I think the biggest thing that I see consistently for me in scripts that I want to champion is emotional resonance. I heard Michelle talking about this earlier, where it's not my job as the reader to find a reason to care about your characters. You need to make me give a shit about the people that you are writing about. So the best writers that I see are the ones who can use emotion to really get through my armor and like hook me in the heart and say, I have got to know what happens to this man or this woman, this character. Like, I've got to see what's happening there because I care about them. Like, I feel like I am in tune with them all the way through. And then the third thing I would say is just writing that has confidence, that is bold, that doesn't feel like it's playing it safe because the writer doesn't want to step out of the bounds and like make a mistake. Those are the 3 things that I see pretty consistently.
Great. Somebody asked about logline contests. Like I'm not sure.
Pitch contest?
Yeah. But I remember seeing back in the day like contests were actual logline contests. I don't know if they still exist anymore, but any thoughts on that?
I don't know that many. I mean, we have a pitch competition, which is, essentially a logline contest, but it's not, we would submit the whole pitch. But I'm not aware of that many others out there.
So, because one of the things we talk about a lot as a staff is the concept, like the importance of figuring out what concept you're going to write about before you put all those months into doing it, you know? So maybe touch on concepts of scripts that you see.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna go against the grain for a moment, and then
Of course.
I'll throw it back to the why? What else would I do
Don't
with my
change,
life?
Matt. Don't ever change.
Fuck the system. Anyway, no, not necessarily against the grain, but I used to think that like concept was kind of everything, and it still sort of is, because it has to be. If I'm going to go out and send a script to one of our industry contacts, I want to be excited to pitch it. It has to be like a story that I can at least finagle and sort of like hopscotch my way around and make it really sound really interesting. Even though it might not be like that interesting, it's just like I want to get them to read the script because the script's really good, right? But if you don't have that, then it takes the wind out of the sails, right? There has to be some little unique thing about the story that hooks us in. It doesn't have to be this grand spectacle of a premise, but there has to be something in there. And what Spike was saying before about what is it that makes the winners end up rising to the top? It just has to feel special. And I know that's ambiguous, but if you've been reading scripts for as long as we have, collectively, like 100 years, I think if we added up all the, maybe not quite 100 years, but 80 years, you get a sixth sense for like what is special and what isn't at some point. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, good, because I can't really put it into words. Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Blink, though, and he tries to explain what that is. There's an intuition amongst experts when they look at something and they know, it elicits a very instinctive reaction, and that's a lot. I can apply that to reading scripts and books and material too. But I don't think concept is. I get yelled at if one of our manager friends listens to me and listens to me say this, but it's not the be all end all. I've seen really great concepts, and I read the scripts, and then the script is just awful. You still have to execute on the good concept, and you can take a mediocre concept and make it special too. How's that for a roundabout non-answer?
Well, but I mean, I think it makes sense. Our runner-up in 2020 was a pretty low concept script on the TV side, and that got runner-up. So you can definitely have low concept stuff that does very well.
2020. I remember what was runner-up in 2020.
We can talk about it offline.
Well, you can tell me the title. I forgot the title. I know Esteban one day.
Queens of Chocolate City.
Oh, that was 2021.
Oh, 2021, excuse me.
Yeah, it feels like 2020. I love that script.
But
did such a great job.
I know you do. But
yes,
point being, I want to come back to what Matt says about knowing when a script is special. If you don't know when a script is not special, then I'm about to have my own little rant here. You need to do more reading. Like if you are a writer who does not read the medium that you're writing in, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I wrote a whole article about this. If you want to get better at being a screenwriter, you need to read more scripts, quite frankly, because eventually when you get kind of like a quarter of the way to us, when you've read like 1,000 scripts and you're, read a whole bunch of them that's like don't interest you, don't grab you, that you're just like trying to kind of get through, and then you find the special one, then you'll kind of understand a little bit more about like how the reader sees it. And that's the same for being a producer or being an executive or being an agent or being a manager. So if you say, I don't know what a special script is, then my answer to you would be read more scripts until you find one. And then you'll kind of start educating yourself that way, and they'll take your writing upwards leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I think I would argue too that a script that like really does all those like screenwriting 101 stuff right, it feels special because it's so hard to do. Like when I'm giving notes, it's always like the character has an unclear motive, or they don't travel like an arc. If they're supposed to travel an arc, they don't do it, or like the structure's all kind of, the beats are like all in the wrong places, or there's no real plot driver. So it's like very rare that we see a script that does all these areas correctly. So I mean, just doing the basic stuff right to me, that can in itself make a script feel special. And then I think the ones that even rise further above that have like an interesting, like unique concept. But I think that gets very, like, I feel like on Twitter, people get very in the weeds about like these little rules here and there, and then their script is missing like very basic, like there's no, like the character is very passive, like the whole second act. And it's like, you know, what's the point of talking about doing these little things right if you haven't even mastered like the basics of
The
storytelling?
Yeah.
Yeah, concept is just one corner of it all. I mean, and you can even take something that's been around for ages, like the Freaky Friday formula, and tweak it and come up with something great, or you could take it and completely kill it, like the movie Freaky with Vince Vaughn. When that came out, and I saw that what the concept was, you know, basically Vince, a serial killer, switching bodies with a teenage girl, and it was just like, oh, that's cool. I've got to see that. But I've read so many Freaky Friday-ish scripts, amateur scripts, that they just don't. They lose the concept, and you've got a basic concept there already, and because of the rest of the execution wasn't present in the script, the concept was kind of went out the window.
But why do you think they failed? Like, what separates Freaky, for example, than another body switch type of script? Is it just that little?
They honestly, they lost the emotion, and they even lost the technical part of the body switching concept. Like it just went off the rails, and I'm just like, how do you not understand what the Freaky Friday concept is? It's right there for you. So just getting lost in their own story, not understanding their own characters, not really, you know, fleshing out and developing the story came through, even though they had a very basic concept that they were working with.
Yeah, I gave notes to a writer, and she responded back a little bit, and she was going for like a Breaking Bad type of concept, and she studied the pilot. And then because I've broken that pilot down, and I told her, like, your beats aren't landing, you know, where it lands in that pilot. And she was like, oh, I didn't realize it. And so I think it's just hard to do. Like, it's hard to write like a good script. And like, I know Spike and I we are more structure focused, because that can get very, like, that's really difficult to master. And if it's not there, the story can just really, the pacing lags. So then you're bored. So I think a lot of scripts, sometimes it feels like, oh, there's this special element to it. And I think there can be with like voice and everything, but a lot of times it's just the technical stuff is like something's off with the technical writing skills. And then that causes the pacing to lag, or if like the characters very written in like a muddy way, you start disconnecting from them. So I think a lot of times it can be traced back to the basic like story, basic story skill set.
Yes, there's 100 different ways on how a script can fall off the rails. And Michelle, you're right. You and Spike are very structure orientated people, which is fine. I mean, so am I. I think I've changed my mind in that respect. Where voice and structure are kind of equally weighted. But you know, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on like developing concepts, but I think it is important, because if you are submitting to different programs and contests and so forth, this is going to be I would say a major factor in garnering interest in your script. And I'll give you another example. Last year's First Look winner, 2021's First Look winner, Elad Ziv's script, Court 17. It's a time loop story. And a time loop story has been done a billion times, right? Palm Springs did it, Groundhog Day. Ever since Groundhog Day, it's just time loop script, time loop script, time loop script. And the thing is, though, it's a time loop script, but he took something that was personal to him, the world of tennis, right? Something that he was fluent in. So he brought that authenticity to it, but also threaded a very strong commentary on older athletes and the pressure that you put yourself on to perform, and yada, yada, yada. I don't particularly watch tennis. The idea of a tennis movie to me sounds, I think golf. So, I mean, if I think tennis is boring, like, just what would a golf movie look like? But it's such a compelling read, because we're with that character on this journey that they have to go through. And it doesn't matter that I think tennis isn't like the most interesting thing to watch, which is kind of a lie. I'll watch tennis. But most people don't really watch tennis, right? Or that we've seen a time loop story before. It doesn't really matter because you have that strong commentary that most people, I think, can relate to, right? And I know I keep harping on it and returning to like the emotional through line, but going back a few questions ago when Jeannie asked, or somebody asked, what separates the top scripts from the rest of it? And it is that it's always that emotional through line. It just feels stronger and more relevant and more weighty than perhaps the other contenders.
Yeah. Every script has a plot. Every script has things that happen. Not every script has characters that actually make the reader care about them. That's the differentiator. If you can write not just to this happens to my character, but if you can write to this happens to my character and then they feel something and then through that feeling they do this, all of a sudden the emotion is driving the story rather than just and then this happened and then this happened and then this happened and then this happened. If you can make me want to know what happens to your character because I feel something that they feel, I'm much more likely to really get in with them.
You've got Dead Poet Society in the background. On paper, that has to be the most boring movie ever, right? But it's the movie itself.
It's so low concept.
Yeah, but the movie is fantastic, right?
Right, because it makes you feel for those kids. And it makes you say,
Right.
I wish I had that teacher as a teacher. It does. It gets in your head. It gets in your heart.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, and by the way, when Spike talks about characters, there's the new episode of Reckless Creatives podcast. It has Scott Myers and his new book, The Protagonist Journey. And just a side note, when you're writing your scripts, it's a really great book and talks all about the character-driven story and about putting character first. And I think there's a lot of writers out there who intuitively do that. And that's how their style of how they write. Like when Spike was saying, and then this, and then this, and then this. And think about TV. When you're watching a TV show, you keep tuning in because you care about those characters. It's the same thing when these guys are reading the scripts for the contest. I mean, if they care about the people they're reading about, they're going to keep turning the page. You know, when they stop turning the page is when they stop caring. So it's
which is independent of concept, and that's why I say concept isn't
right.
particularly king anymore.
Yeah,
Concept
which is
gets
really
you to
interesting.
open it. Sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, concept gets you to open the first page. Emotion gets you to keep going is all I was trying to say.
Ah, perfect. You know what? You can write that as an article, Spike. Thank you very much.
I'll get a pen when this is over and I'll write that down.
That's right. Just write it down. Someone asked about our successes and the percentage of people who get wrapped in pipeline. And I'm just going to drop the, hold on one second. We actually have a success page on our site where you can get some of that information. And
I'm updating it tonight with visitation too. So
okay, so get on that.
What it's worth. I can speak to that a little bit
Yeah,
too.
please.
Last year was kind of a weird year just because I don't know, it was just difficult. It was difficult to get people to read things in their normal quickness. The TV landscape is kind of shrinking, at least I think, hopefully temporarily. Curious what Roni actually thinks about that, but we can touch upon that toward the end, perhaps. And as a result, it's kind of created this domino effect where, you know, managers might be taking on less TV clients, for example, because there's just not that many staffing opportunities at the moment. But still, last year we got a handful of writers repped. One of them that we did, he ended up the time loop script I mentioned, he was number 2 on the blacklist this past year. Number 1 on the blacklist was also a screenwriting finalist of ours. I think she had just signed with someone else before the announcement anyway. But yeah, there's at least 3, 4, 5 writers that are getting signed per year. As far as like scripts optioned and scripts produced and that sort of thing. Look, Helen won for Visitation in 2019. It is 2023 now, so it's a solid 3 years detached from when she won and when she signed with UTA right after the contest. And that's even kind of quick to get a film made. And I'm hoping to interview her in the next few months to speak to that whole process and the directors that were on board and that might not have been on board after that, and you know, just that whole dynamic because it's the same story for how every film gets made. It just takes time. So I think that answers the question was roughly how many successes we have annually.
Yeah, or just like, percentage of people wrapped, and maybe
Yeah.
if you can speak to that process of going out and trying to get them wrapped, like, any thoughts you have on how to make yourself, like, say you do really well in a contest. Well, what helps it's like you want to, the contest is going to find you, like you submit, they find you, but then what can the writer do to help them help you?
Oh, that's a good
get
question.
wrapped?
Right. I mean, look, there's only so much we can do. There's only so many close contacts that we have. If you do win a notable contest like ours, I would still send queries down. Usually we kind of coordinate with the writers in the near term over like who we're sending to. If they want to send to X company and we have a close relationship with X company, we'll just send it ourselves direct. So there's kind of a stage of, us doing our own sort of circulation, but they don't just get to sit back and like, all right, well, now I'm all set. It's the same thing when you do get signed. You can't just sit back and be like, well, now my manager just will take care of everything. You still have to be super proactive in everything you're doing, writing new scripts and so forth. I'm sure Roni can speak to that as well. You always have to be creating new stuff. And that's also what helps us because we do go back and help our former finalists. If it like 6 months goes by and they had a couple managers that liked their writing, but that script wasn't for them and they haven't written anything new, that manager is going to forget about them if they haven't already. You have to always be developing or always have scripts in the cooker.
The pipeline.
In the pipeline,
Matt.
It was right there.
But you.
Missing the forest for the trees. So yeah, always have more material ready to go that reflects your voice, that reflects your style. Continue querying, continue getting your stuff out there. We've had writers that have placed high in nickel, that have even won nickel in some cases, and they just kind of hit dead ends with that script, and they would submit to us, and it just so happened that we had the contact that lined up correctly. So I could talk for hours about like the different variations on different paths that each writer took, but
Oh, which reminds me, we actually do have a symposium that we did about agents and managers. There's another free one. Fantastic
great one, too.
discussion. If you guys want to know like what they look for and that whole process, I'll grab the link and drop it in there.
So many links in the chat.
Well,
No, I mean that's good.
We have a lot of resources. Roni, I want to direct this question at you. Somebody was asking about action lines, and a writer friend insists that action lines should track the attitudes of characters. Some readers have felt my action lines are too novelistic. What is the purpose of an action line, and should they always be no longer than 2 lines?
I won't put like this is the exact word count and line number that an action line should have, but I can definitely offer it when a writer writes books and then writes a screenplay. And I like to say to writers that your action lines in particular and your screenplay as a whole is a blueprint for production. And when you're writing for production, you're writing for set designers, you're writing for the director, you're writing for the actors, you're writing for the PAs, you're writing for the line producer that breaks down the script, et cetera, et cetera. So if your action lines are, Steve looks to the left and he thinks to himself, I had a dream last night, blah, blah, blah. How is that going to be conveyed to the rest of those people that are going to receive this script in that pipeline? Is it necessary information? Is it information that is actionable? Is it information that basically seems like an internal note for somebody behind the scenes as opposed to something that is going to be translated from script to screen? So, if your action, and I've seen scripts where, of course, there's a lot of action and there's more action than there is dialogue. but the action is actionable. And it's not just something that is on the page that doesn't feel necessary, that doesn't push the plot forward, that I don't know. And it's weird because it's like, well, how do I tell when I'm being too novelistic? I would say if you already have that feeling, scale back, because you shouldn't even ask that question. You should be able to tell the difference between your script and a novel. And it's something that is brevity, it is to the point, it is direction, it is directive, it's going to be translated from script to screen.
I knew you were the person to ask that question. That was
when I open a script and I'm just like, this person wrote a book, or this is a book, I can immediately tell. Immediately.
Yep. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that?
I was muted, but that's okay. I've already said it to myself. No, I was saying it's when you start getting into descriptions that don't matter, like the shape of the windowsill, or how many bushes are outside the house, like that stuff doesn't matter. If it's contributing to like necessary elements that we need to know going into the scene, then yes. If you're writing Banshees of Inisherin, I pronounced that right? I feel like I pronounced many things wrong. That's okay.
Just say how I think so.
Yeah, whatever. It's being Oscar nominated Best Picture. I should know how to pronounce it. But the scenes off the coast of Ireland. Boy, what a terrible example I picked. I don't know anything about this film that I just saw 3 days ago. But it's including those elements of like the weather and that sort of thing, I think would be necessary to put on page, because it is setting up the mood of the script that's kind of crucial to the plot itself and the characters and that whole backdrop. So there is kind of a fine line to walk when it comes to description.
Yeah.
I would say if you feel when you read your script like you are doing the job of a set designer, stop.
Yes.
If you're doing the job of a costume designer, stop. If you are doing the job of a director, either through camera angles or telling every actor or every character in your script of how to say their exact lines, stop. That's not your job. Film is a collaborative medium. There are going to be hundreds of people who work on this story. Your job is to tell the story, inject the story straight into our veins, and do it as quickly as possible. Don't beat around the bush with it. Don't explain, how many bushes are out front, unless how many bushes are out front matters, because the next scene is one less bush, because that's where the body's buried. Like that's the only time you should include things like that. And then in terms of action being too novelistic, I wonder if what they're saying, like I'm wondering if the action has things that are happening inside a character's head. Like if you say, oh, the character thinks this, or oh, he wonders this, or he feels this. The audience in a film, like in a movie theater or at their home watching a TV show, can't see what the character's thinking. They might be able to intuit it. They might be able to read their face, but they can't know what's inside their head. And so when someone tells you that your description is too novelistic, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. I wonder if you're including things like that. You might not be, but that's just where my mind goes.
Yeah, I think a helpful exercise that I did, because I went from writing plays to getting to screenplays, so I had a hard time understanding what action lines are supposed to look like. So like I took a script that I really enjoyed, like I think it was like The Babadook, and I think it did Hell or High Water, and I just opened up a final draft document and I just typed out the screenplay, like a couple minutes, like 15 minutes every day. I just retyped it, and like doing that, you kind of get a feel for how professional writers are like spacing out the action lines, when they're what they're choosing to describe, what they're not choosing to describe, dialogue. So it's kind of a tedious exercise, but it's kind of, I don't know, it helped me a lot, like just writing someone else's script, just copying it word for word. It's like you just get a sense of their rhythm, and then when you write your own material, it's kind of that rhythm's already ingrained in you. So it's helpful. I don't know, I find it helpful.
That's a really good exercise.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't think it's a bad idea to some writers will say no, and most might say no, but even reaching out to some and asking them, hey, can I read your actually, take that back. Don't do that. We can cut that out. We'll edit that part out. Ruth. It was a, it was a folly of a suggestion. I was going to say, ask them to read their contest winning script, but I don't. Usually, I'll tell our winners and finalists not to send stuff out because it's being actively circulated to industry. But if you have a friend who placed in a contest or won a contest, that's different, and I think it's worth reading that script. I know the blacklist scripts themselves aren't circulated, they're not supposed to be circulated, but anything you can get your hands on that had some sort of buzz and just was recently produced or is about to be produced, I would take a look at that, look at that as well, and just kind of glean as much as you can from it.
Yeah.
Are we?
Sorry,
Sorry,
go
Jenny,
ahead,
are we
Ruth.
still on the action line question? Was that?
Yeah, that's what they were talking
Okay,
about.
I just wanted to cap that off as like the definition of an action line is action. And action needs to be
Right.
taking place. Basic,
Yeah.
the basic definition of it. If you're sitting there giving a lot of exposition that has no action, no movement to it, then it shouldn't be there. So action line is an action.
There you go. We actually did have a symposium about action lines, just saying. So we've gotten a couple questions about wanting to know, get to gauge the competition in the playing field about how many scripts that we get. We can't obviously speak to other contests, but what's our submission rate? I know it fluctuates, COVID, whatever, but a general idea.
Numbers?
What are the numbers?
For screenwriting and TV writing combined, the last few years, it ranges anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 scripts for the season. The first look project is less, and honestly, I mean, if you wrote a really great comedy, your odds of winning first look for that comedy division is greater, just because there's less competition, because we do group it by division or group it by genre category. But first look ends up being around 5,000 total. I don't have category specifics, but in the high hundreds, maybe the biggest category has 1,000, like hour-long drama. Michelle, you would echo that? That sounds about right. Michelle runs.
I think,
the
yeah,
database.
that
She would
sounds
know.
about right. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a lot more competitive than the South Dakota Film Festival. God bless the South Dakota Film Festival, but just going back, just to kind of, it was like the first question. I do think there's some value in entering maybe a smaller screenwriting competition if you think you can win and the entry fee is low enough and you might get a little cash prize out of it. That could be worth exploring, but otherwise the bigger contests do get pretty competitive with several thousand entries.
So the second part of the question was how many make the cut for quarterfinalists, how many semifinalists, and how many finalists?
This is kind of a newer cut line for us, but last year, for example, for screenwriting, it was 50 something scripts were in quarters, and then 30 something, maybe high 20s were in semis, and then we pick a top 10 finalists. Same for TV writing. For first look, each category picks we pick a winner and we pick a runner-up only. And then for pitch, it's just one overall winner and then at least one runner-up, which could fluctuate. Same thing with first look, actually. It's not just limited to one runner-up. I wanted to have that leeway just in case we had.
So for first look and pitch, right now, we don't have any quarters or semis placements. It's just winners and runners-up.
Right, because it's a smaller field. The bigger field, I want to expand it. And again, I don't want us to pick when I'm dead and gone and someone else is running this company. They can do whatever they like. But my preference right now would be to whoever we say, hey, they placed as a pipeline blank, we should be giving them some sort of development help and reviewing the script and at least considering that future script for industry. And to do that, we can't pick 1,500 people, 1,000 people, right? It has to be kind of a small group because we don't have the human power in place to review that many scripts. So yeah, that's kind of the breakdown. We don't have to talk about book pipeline, but book pipeline, same sort of thing. We just pick up winners and runners up.
To be fair, any contest has the infrastructure to handle that many scripts in terms of development.
If you want to do development stuff, no, yeah, you can't.
No.
So it's not just us.
Right.
And I will say another perk of being a pipeline finalist is we will reach out to you to see if you want to write pipeline artist articles.
Right, that's it.
Because I will say for all of you writers out there, this is not like there's the contest thing is one way to get discovered and noticed, but also writing articles for publications, online publications, writing your own blog. I mean, there's lots of other things you can do that also get you discovered and people notice your voice. Like I had written an article for Writer's Digest print magazine, and an agent, screenwriting agent, reaches out to me to say, I love your writing voice. Do you have any scripts, that I could read? So you never know where someone might find you. So don't rely like just on contests. You have to like do a whole bunch of other things too, like cast as many wide nets. But contests, I mean, they really can work.
I have a manager friend, sorry, off this point, Jeannie. I have a manager friend who got some of his best clients off stories from Reddit, where he would read Reddit threads, and they were amazing writers and he would sign them. And I think one of them even got like, I want to say got staffed on House of the Dragon. I can't confirm that, but I remember he was like touting some really big success with some Reddit writer. So putting your writing out anywhere can lead to success. So
I was gonna say I worked with the person that got staffed based off of a tweet.
Yeah.
Just put yourself out there as much as possible. Have a presence.
There you go.
We should have a tweet contest.
That'd be fun.
Best tweet.
Oh,
God, that sounds like a landmine waiting to happen.
exactly. That sounds crazy.
Best
I
tweet.
could judge for it. I'm on there half the day anyway. So
Okay, so somebody else, I'm trying to find the questions that really pertain to contests before we dive into others if we have more time. Somebody asked if we prefer script submissions to be copyrighted.
It doesn't matter.
I've never looked for that.
Okay, so
It's
that's another
useless.
question. Some people who put like the WGA registration number on the cover of the. I wanted to just address that.
That's unnecessary. I mean, whenever you start actually querying out your materials, then I would say at that point you should have at least registered it with the WGA West, and also have it copyrighted whenever you start querying it out. But you don't have to have like the registration number on your script. You can literally just put in WGAW registry.
Hey Ruth, you want a curveball? I think the WGA registration is pointless too. That is the big secret.
Well, it's not pointless to the fact that it won't cover you legally in a court of law, and I'm not like a professional on this, but it won't cover you legally in terms of, but it does actually point to the moment that a concept is like originated in the industry world, which can help, in terms of like who had it first.
Sure, yeah, that's
way
true.
that it can help.
But you can't protect the idea anyway, so it's like
Right, you
the
can't
point
protect it. Well, nobody can protect an idea. That's not copyrightable. Just the screenplay is copyrightable. So
Execution idea is copyrighted.
that's right. Execute the idea.
Right. So if you do register for the WGA, it has to be a complete script anyway. It can't just be like a pitch document or something.
Correct. And you should do it. You should have a copyright, an actual copyright, not just a WGA registration is not suitable, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think something I wanted to add, because I handle a lot of the questions about our contest. We're really not nitpicky about like little things in terms of just like getting disqualified. So like if you leave your contact info or something, like I get questions like that all the time. So we're not one of those contests where it's like, oh, you included something like you left in your last name, so now you're automatic DQ. We're not that kind of vibe. Like I know some contests you want to really double check and everything, but we're more like kind of a big picture contest, and we let people update their scripts after registering too. So I wouldn't stress too much. Just make sure you submit by the deadline, get everything in by the deadline, but you don't have to stress out too much about like, if I leave my WGA number on there, is it going to reflect negatively against that? We're really looking at the writing, not those little nitpicky stuff.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because with all contests, with all fellowships, just make sure you look at all the little points of criteria, the FAQs, the requirements and all that before you submit, please. I know you guys are probably, the attendees tonight are probably on top of all that, but I'm sure Michelle still gets what I used to get for
Oh
many
yeah,
years.
every day. Every day.
It's like they'll submit like a document that's just images. It's like, no, that's that's not a
Yeah.
script at all. And then we refund them. But
We should do some
some
of these
Yeah.
rapid fire, Jeannie.
Well, some of these are asking about where to find unproduced scripts to read, because all the scripts that are typically available online are produced, so they have all those camera angles and scene numbers and all that stuff that aren't in spec scripts. So any thoughts on how to find unproduced scripts to read?
You can read the blacklist that gets published every single year. Those are unproduced.
they don't
screenplays.
attach this. I mean, look, you can go on Reddit and you can
Yeah,
probably
you can
find
find
it.
it. I
that's
found it every
just-
year.
Don't
I-
tweet
Don't
out
tweet
violence,
it
though, because
about it,
you'll
though.
get yelled at,
Yeah.
rightfully so.
You can find
So,
the blacklist. You can also, if you have like a Coverfly account or something like that, you can swap scripts with peers that are there. There's what, and you can also just ask people in writers groups, for their scripts to read them as well. So
Yeah.
Scriptlab has a database still, I think, too, of produced screenplays.
IMDb-S, I think is what it is.
Oh, that too, yeah, maybe.
And Reddit's screenwriting forum has like a Friday weekend swap thing where you can
Yeah.
like, people will post, hey, I'm looking for readers on this, and they'll trade.
Right.
So you can do that.
The Screenwriting Network on Facebook is huge on people trading scripts.
Yeah. I personally
Um,
would stay off of Reddit. That's just that's my biggest piece of
That's the
advice.
man who lives on Twitter.
Okay, those are two very different dysfunctional platforms, and I prefer the dysfunction of Twitter. Just saying.
Some people are asking about, a couple people are asking about like looking up the reader on, the writer rather, on social media and checking them out, whatnot. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily something we do when
Potential reps
choosing,
will,
but
Yeah.
yeah,
1000%. Yeah.
so clean up that social media.
I
Be
think-
yourself though. Don't hold back. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, whenever we get down to our finalists, so I think somebody was asking on there, like if our judging was anonymous. And so at the very beginning, like the contest is anonymous, in that we do not know who the writers are. But the moment that you place, you are no longer anonymous. Like we have to know your name in order to put you on our list of placements. And so once we whittle that down to our finalists, I guarantee you that Matt is looking you up on social media and trying to figure out.
Well, I am just to follow
As
you.
a finalist, so
I wouldn't
in a good way. No, in a good way.
no, in a
'cause
good way. Yeah.
excited. It's like, who the hell is this brilliant writer, that's taken us by storm. So yeah. So by the time you get down to a finalist list, you are being looked up on social media. So
And there's
Okay.
never been a case, I doubt there will ever be a case where I, follow them to the script pipeline account and just happen to glance at their tweets, and the tweets are so alarming that I have to
yeah, I don't think
remove them
that.
and refund them from the contest, but it's
Yeah.
possible. But
Do you
no.
guys, another question was, do you want their script ideas listed on Coverfly or ISA, or is it best for them to have their own personal websites?
Say that first part again.
I think they're asking, they had asked about the looking people up, but also, do you want their script ideas listed on Coverfly or ISA, or is it best for them to have their scripts and projects listed on their own personal website?
I don't think they should list their scripts anywhere publicly. I mean, a Coverfly has the option where you upload the script, and it's only available to industry, right? Like the blacklist.
No, I think both of them allow you to like make your script public, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's a public setting and there's a private setting.
Yeah.
Oh,
that you have
leave it
your-
private. That would be my suggestion.
Best tips for world building in a script while avoiding blocks of text.
I would go back to what we talked about. If you feel like you're being a set decorator, stop. If you feel like you're being a costume designer, stop. It's not your job, like it is in a novel, to paint every single detail in our heads the same way that you would in a book. It's your job you are the storyteller. You need to inject the story and the characters straight into our veins. We don't need to know about every last element of your story. I guarantee that when Peter Jackson wrote The Lord of the Rings, he was not putting every single thing he included on the screen on the page. I haven't read those scripts, but I guarantee that didn't happen.
Right.
I mean, I got a really great note because I wrote like a crazy sci-fi world. I ended up abandoning it, but I had like the first page, it listed like, oh, in this corner of the world, there's this happening. And then in this corner, there's this. And then people are also wearing these outfits. So he was like, you can like take us through it with the character. So like, oh, the character like walks to it was like a plaza area. So they walk to the center and they see this happening right in front of them. And then like someone bumps them in the shoulder, and then that person, like they notice they're wearing this outfit. So you can kind of, I think breaking down the world through the POV of your protagonist can be a great way to get across everything and make it digestible. Just don't like front load all the information, basically, like kind of pace it out. Like in Handmaid's Tale, it's not like you get them saying I forgot the expression, but they don't say that expression and then explain everything and do everything on the first page. It's like you get one piece of information in the beginning, and then like they meet someone, they say that prayer or whatever, and then they just keep going and you get more and more information slowly. So just don't front load it all at once.
I would say still and I think writing for animation has really taught me how to discern what needs to be on the page, because it's literally just, I only write what matters. And that's what you should be looking at, right? What matters, what is going to be translated from script to screen. If you're getting into the thoughts and the feeling, I mean, and not, I won't even say that because, you know, sometimes that's a note for the actor or whatnot, but you should honestly know if you're getting too heavy when it comes to your descriptions and your world building. You're not writing a book, you're writing a script, and it's going to be taken hopefully from script to screen. So write what matters.
What are your thoughts about writing a script and submitting under a pseudonym?
I mean, that's fine, as long as your name is accurate in the billing information, then you should
Have to be able to find you.
As long as they can find you, you know, you're usually pretty good on
Oh,
that.
that's a great side note too. Make the contest administrator's life as easy as possible. Not that it'll affect the judging or anything, but it'll make everyone's life easier.
The Michelle's.
Yeah. And
Right.
somebody just wanted a little clarification. They said, why not post your scripts on ISA? Or have I misunderstood? I think they were just saying not to choose the option that keeps it private,
Yeah.
not public.
Yeah, I wouldn't make it public personally.
Yeah, well, I think what you mean by that, Matt, is like you don't want somebody who can actually download your script, you know,
Correct.
like and take
Yeah,
it
some
and then
rando.
literally could copy like chunks of dialogue or description off of your pages or do it, you know, themselves or something to that effect.
Oh,
Like
that too, yeah.
that would be bad, you know, like, but if you have like if you have your scripts in your Coverfly account or your ISA account where it's just easily accessible for you to grab and submit or something to that effect, I think that's kind of how the platforms work, and that's fine. You know?
It's funny, I was thinking something completely different. It was like you're gonna get unsolicited feedback on your work from randoms.
That too.
You know?
That
So.
too. Somebody will just send you like a scathing email one day and you're like,
Right.
what in the world?
So we've got 5 minutes left. So just want to grab a couple of these. One of them asks, what is the average age and sex of the competition readers? A 20-year-old male might not get my screenplay.
I really want to answer this question. If
Yes,
I
please.
can.
And then I'll follow up.
I can't wait.
Go around the circle, guys. Go around this. No, I'm joking.
Number one, we can't speak to other contests, but I've heard it completely all over the map. I mean, everyone at Pipeline has at least, Matt, I want to say what, 5 years of
Well,
experience?
now it's even, we haven't hired anybody new in a while. I think Bev is
7?
probably our youngest reader. She's got at least 5. So yeah,
Yeah.
Anywhere from 5 to 25 plus, 20,
Yeah.
20 plus years.
Years of reading. Yeah.
Everyone at Pipeline is pretty experienced, but I've also heard of other contests that will literally take glorified interns, pull them off the street in their first year in LA where they have not read that many scripts, pay them $10 and just like have them churn through as many screenplays as possible. So it's all across the map, but I really don't think that saying, you know, this age or demographic is not going to get my screenplay is going to help you very much. Because if you get to the point where either your screenplay is getting read by producers or agents or managers, you don't get to choose what the demographic of that agent or manager or producer or network executive is. Like, your screenplay needs to be like universally solid to where most people could get it. Obviously, there's going to be like an outside element somewhere, because not everyone's going to have the same experience and not everyone's going to resonate with the same material. But I don't think that, like, you don't unfortunately get the chance to like throw your perfect reader on a dartboard and get that every time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like there are certain things that you concern yourself with, like, oh, should I copyright my material, etc. And there are some things that you probably shouldn't concern yourself with. If you are concerned that somebody's not getting your script, is most likely going to be because it's not written well, rather than it's comprehensible. So, you know, things like that, things like numbers, asking the age of readers and stuff like that, those things shouldn't be as concerning as, is my script good? That's how it's going to be placed, or that's how it's going to be. That's what's going to determine how it does out in the industry or contest and in general.
You do want an experienced reader, though. You know, you don't want someone who's just started reading scripts 3 months ago to be.
Well, I mean, but they were
making
asking the age of
us.
the
Yeah,
reader.
not
Well,
they weren't asking
age-
experience level, they were asking age.
Yeah, look, I don't want to be ageist, but like a 19-year-old, just in terms of math, is not going to have the experience level. I don't care how brilliant of a writer or reader they might be. They're not going to have the experience level with someone else, right? Unless they've been reading scripts since they were 14, 13, which could happen. So that's why, like, you never know.
But I was an assistant at an agency when I was 21 years old. So like everyone starts somewhere. Like, unfortunately, you just cannot. You can't dictate the age and the demographics of your reader. And so I'm with Roni. It needs to be like, if your script is good, people are going to notice it. Now, obviously you do for like a contest and getting notes, you want more experience, but you have no control over that.
You want experience, and you also want, this is kind of a tangential addendum, but you really want an open-minded reader. And by that, I mean someone who's going to take different perspectives, different voices, different subject matter, all that into consideration, and consider that, you know, through a unbiased and open lens. That's the one thing I stress with all you guys, right? Whenever you're reading for the contest, just like, you know, it might not be your thing, but, you know, take a couple, 2-3 steps backwards and really look at it objectively. I've picked scripts to win before that I didn't particularly like personally, or that I didn't necessarily understand, but I knew that they were good scripts. I knew they were good stories, and they resonated some way, right? So
Well, just don't send Matt a fantasy script, because I will just.
I like fantasy. If you missed the first part of this panel.
So we are at the 9 o'clock hour. Time to wrap it up. So
right.
Just gonna ask one more question. Any hopes for what you want to win, best original or best adapted screenplay for that?
Any fantasy scripts is good with me, because you know I'm like you know how big of a fantasy fan I am. I haven't seen everything, but I haven't. I'll weigh in last. Go ahead.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Ruth?
I honestly, that was my choice too. I loved that movie. So
Spike.
I don't understand. I don't understand that movie. I would go.
Oh gosh.
I think it's
Which
fine.
one?
I don't
You
think it's
gotta
as
see it
amazing as
again.
everyone else does.
You would go with what?
I would go with The Whale.
Okay.
I still have yet to see that. I want to see it.
Michelle.
I haven't seen, I don't even know what's been nominated. I wasn't a huge fan of Everything Everywhere either. So I don't even know. I haven't seen The Whale.
Okay, well,
I don't even know. Yeah,
good
that's my
effort.
homework. Yeah,
The correct
my
answer
homework
is Everything Everywhere All
the
at Once.
Oscar list is
Everything
Michelle's.
Everywhere is probably gonna win, but The Whale. I mean, I can't imagine, because it's starting to sweep when it comes to awards. So it's gonna be a strong contender.
I don't know. Brendan Fraser got snubbed in the Golden Globes, so we'll see. I don't
Oh, he
know.
did. Didn't he get?
He's going to win an Oscar.
But I think that was a complicated thing.
if I can brag, and I'll probably be totally wrong, so you can hold it against me, but in April, when I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, I left the theater thinking this is gonna be the dark horse best pick winner.
Oh,
Maybe. Might not, but we'll see. Spike didn't get it, and Michelle didn't get
And
it.
Jamie
Yeah.
Lee
I mean, I
Curtis
liked it. I just
did-
was like,
No.
No,
That
but
didn't-
Michelle and I are on the same page here.
No, honestly, if the whale could win, I'd say go for it. Brendan deserves it. He deserves it.
yeah, it would be like one of those, like, what is it, comeback player of the year's awards for the NFL, you know, for
Right.
Frazier and that. So I would be okay with that. So.
But quickly
It's the
returning
Tony
to-
Romo of cinema.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
See, guys, this is what happens when we debate who should win and who should become
Yeah,
second
sorry.
place.
This is it, yeah.
right? This is
Yeah.
like a whole sort of a glimpse into it, but that's actually even more intense. So but
Right.
thank you guys for coming, and thank all of our panelists for hanging out with us tonight. So you will get a recording of this in a few days, but also for anybody looking at the upcoming symposiums, we've got one next week on hiring a book editor, and one on January 31st, how to write a standout opening that applies to both screenwriting and novelists. And then we've got a crowdfunding one, if any of you are looking to make some indie films, on February 7th. So thank you again for joining us, and go get back to writing and polish those scripts and do everything we suggested.
I'm gonna go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once again.
You
because it's
should.
that good.
I'm gonna watch the whale
Thank you, Ron.
one day.
Goodbye,
Thank
everybody.
you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
bye.